On a freezing winter night, a university student named Daniel wrapped up a late study session in his small cabin, located on the outskirts of campus and near a thick forest. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and sweeping snow across the porch. He had just closed his laptop and was heading to the kitchen for a cup of tea when he heard a faint, pitiful sound from outside. It was so soft and fragile that it could have easily been mistaken for the wind rustling through branches. However, something prompted Daniel to stop and listen again. He approached the front door and opened it cautiously. A blast of cold air hit him, but it wasn't that chill that caught his breath. Just a few feet from his doorstep, partially hidden behind a snowdrift, was a small, trembling figure. Its body was low to the ground, with tense limbs and fur crusted in frost. The creature's wide, luminous eyes were locked onto Daniel, revealing a mix of fear and exhaustion. It was a young bobcat, barely larger than a domestic cat, yet undeniably wild. Daniel stood frozen, his heart racing. He knew wild animals could be unpredictable, but this one appeared to have nothing left to fight. Its ribs were visible beneath the matted fur, and patches of blood-stained snow told a troubling story. Scrapes lined its side, there was a jagged tear on one ear, and one hind leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Instead of snarling or hissing, the bobcat simply stared. A tightness formed in Daniel's chest as he stepped forward slowly, keeping his voice calm and low. "Hey there, it's okay, I'm not gonna hurt you." To his surprise, the bobcat didn't run or flinch. He took that as a sign and removed his flannel overshirt, kneeling carefully to wrap it gently around the little creature. The bobcat let out a soft grunt of pain, but didn't resist him. Daniel lifted the animal into his arms, surprised by how light it felt. Inside, he placed it near the fireplace, quickly stoking the flames to warm the space. As the heat spread, he grabbed a few towels and his thickest blanket, diligently drying the snow from its fur and creating a cushioned nest for the bobcat. Although the creature didn't move much, its breathing became steadier. Now, he could see the full extent of her condition, undernourished, injured, and scarred. Daniel realized he couldn't manage this alone. It was too late to consult regular veterinarians, but the university had a small wildlife rehabilitation center on campus. He had helped out there once for a class. With a sense of urgency, he made a call, feeling the weight of the moment as he waited on the other end of the line. After discussing with the team, they decided Daniel could bring the bobcat in first thing in the morning. Until then, he needed to keep her comfortable. He carefully cleaned her wounds with supplies from a basic first aid kit, avoiding anything that might cause her pain. The bobcat would occasionally growl softly, but she refrained from attacking. Daniel kept his distance, respecting her space while he set out a bowl of water and some cooked chicken from the fridge. It took some time, but eventually, the bobcat began to eat, taking small, cautious bites. As midnight approached, the storm intensified. Snow piled against the windowsills, and the forest outside looked almost magical under the moonlight. Inside, there was a feeling of quiet tension and awe. Unable to sleep, Daniel settled near the fireplace, watching the bobcat drift into a restless slumber. Even curled up, she kept one eye half open, alert but no longer fearful of his presence. When morning came, it appeared as a blur of gray light. Daniel wrapped the bobcat in a blanket and gently placed her in a laundry basket lined with towels. He loaded her into his old Jeep, maneuvering carefully along the snow-covered roads to the rehabilitation center, where the staff was waiting. "Are you sure it's a bobcat?" one of the handlers inquired. "Absolutely," Daniel responded. "It's a young female. Looks like she got into some trouble." The staff took her in for examination while Daniel lingered nearby, his hands tucked in his coat pockets and his heart racing. The vet, Dr. Elon, a calm and assured man, examined the bobcat with skill. X-rays confirmed her hind leg was sprained but not broken, and the bite marks on her body seemed to be from another animal, possibly a coyote or an older bobcat. The vet's main concern was malnutrition. "You did well," Dr. Elon assured him. "She's got a chance thanks to you." When Daniel asked if she would recover, the vet nodded. "She's a fighter. You can visit her while she heals if you'd like." Daniel did not just visit, he returned almost every day. The staff soon stopped trying to keep him out of the examination room after noticing how the bobcat responded to him. Her ears perked up, her pupils softened, and her body relaxed when he entered. It was clear she had formed a bond with him. They allowed him to name her, and he chose Soft Paw to reflect how she moved silently through the snow, delicate and fragile, with her claws hidden even in pain. As weeks passed, the bobcat's wounds began to heal. As the winter chill faded, Soft Paw's coat became thicker, showcasing a beautiful silver-brown sheen. She regained some strength in her hind leg, although a slight limp still lingered. What caught everyone's attention was her behavior. Rather than showing aggression, Soft Paw approached with curiosity. She accepted food from Daniel's hand, rubbed against the bars of her enclosure when he spoke to her, and even allowed him to scratch behind her ears. Dr. Elon observed her progress closely. Bobcats don't typically become tame, he explained. They usually remain wild and skittish. But this one, she might be different. Perhaps she was orphaned too early or sees you as part of her family now. Daniel remained quiet, gazing into Soft Paw's eyes, feeling a deep connection that words couldn't express. As spring approached, the center faced an important choice. Soft Paw was healthy enough to return to the wild, but Daniel felt anxious about the idea. Would she survive? He questioned Dr. Elon. The vet hesitated for a moment. Physically, yes. Emotionally, it's hard to say. She has become quite dependent on you. That could be risky for her out there. They reached a compromise. Soft Paw would live a semi-wild life in a protected forest near the campus, with feeding stations monitored and a tracking collar in place. Daniel could still visit her, but the hope was for her to reconnect with her natural instincts. The day they released her felt bittersweet. Daniel carried Soft Paw deep into the woods in a special carrier. When they opened the gate, Soft Paw paused, looking between Daniel and the towering trees. "Go on, girl. This is your world now," he encouraged gently. With hesitant steps, she ventured out, testing the ground beneath her. She glanced back once, her tail flicking, before disappearing into the underbrush. After she was released, Daniel kept track of her movements through the tracker. Over time, it showed that she stayed close to the area, exploring thickets and ridges, hunting squirrels and rabbits, and finding shelter under the rocky outcrop by the stream. When storms swept through, Daniel would follow her data trails, observing how she meandered through the familiar forest behind his cabin. Sometimes the evidence of her presence was right in front of him. Paw prints in the mud left by summer rain, fresh scratches on the old oak trees along the trail, or subtle impressions in the grass where she had rested. Daniel never attempted to interfere. Instead, he trekked to those spots, savoring the connection they still shared, even from a distance. He never called Soft Paw's name anymore. That had stopped months ago. However, he still left food for her. Small offerings like strips of dried meat or the occasional piece of chicken or fish when his budget allowed. Each time he would place the food down and turn away, never waiting for any sign of acknowledgement. Still, every now and then, he caught a glimpse of Soft Paw's fur flickering through the trees or the tip of her tufted ear. One day, she emerged quietly from behind a bush, brushed her broad head against his leg for just a moment, and then vanished without a sound. Their relationship had changed. It no longer felt dictated by need or urgency. Instead, it found a steady rhythm, quieter now, like old trees growing together with branches that touched occasionally, while their roots intertwined deep beneath the surface. And this was just the beginning. Soft Paw didn't disappear completely. Her presence lingered in the way the forest felt less desolate, in the slight rustling near the cabin just after dusk, or in the soft thud of paws landing gently on the porch. One evening, Daniel heard that familiar sound again, a deliberate, heavy yet graceful movement that was distinctly more substantial than a raccoon. He stepped outside slowly, hoping not to frighten whatever was there. Sure enough, Soft Paw stood just out of the reach of the porch light, observing him closely. This time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, partially hidden by the brush, were two smaller shapes, bobcat cubs barely 4 months old. One had a sleek silver streak running along its back, while the other glimmered softly in the light, catching a variety of colors in its fur. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. Soft Paw gracefully approached and sat beside him on the porch, her body barely brushing against his leg. The cubs hesitated before one. The silver-streaked one cautiously sniffed at the wooden step and climbed up. The other cub explored a bit before finding a cozy spot under the swing bench. Daniel smiled and whispered, "Flash," nodding toward the silver cub, and then Rainbow for the other. They were hers. The cubs appeared alert and skittish but showed no signs of fear. Softpaw remained calm, her gaze fixed on the trees as if she were standing guard, her tail flicking occasionally. It wasn't until Daniel leaned back against the wooden bench, relaxing, that she turned her focus toward him. There was no movement or sound, just a look that conveyed everything he needed to understand. She was well, they were safe, and she had returned not out of necessity, but because she wanted to. As if sensing the moment, Flash rolled playfully on the porch like a kitten, pouncing clumsily at a shadow. Rainbow's tail caught the attention of one of the cubs, who playfully nudged him away. The other cub sat in the corner, pretending to be disinterested, while Daniel remained still, letting the moment imprint itself on his memory like a dream he wished would last. Eventually, Softpaw, the soft-pawed leader of the cubs, rose gracefully, and the little ones bounded after her, full of energy. She paused at the top of the steps, turned to Daniel for just a moment, and then vanished into the shadows. He lingered outside long after they had gone, his fingers wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, feeling a unique thud in his heart that came with a blend of wonder and calm. That summer, Daniel threw himself into his internship at the Wildlife Conservation Center. He was the first to arrive and the last to leave, willingly tackling the toughest assignments. Everyone noticed. His professors, his supervisors, even a seasoned conservationist who once doubted Daniel's suitability for fieldwork. They asked what had changed. In response, he simply smiled and said, "I had a teacher no one else could see." He never named Softpaw. She wasn't a pet or just another project. She embodied something timeless, wild, and wise in ways that no textbook could convey. Yet, her lessons accompanied him into every report he wrote and every injured creature he cared for, shaping his decisions with patience and empathy. On his days off, Daniel often returned to the cabin, where he would tidy up the porch, fix a loose railing, or restock the emergency food supply. One day, he found a long, iridescent feather placed carefully by the door. Another time, he discovered a neat pile of pine needles arranged in a perfect circle, a remnant of where the cubs had played. These were not just random occurrences, they were signs of their presence. As fall approached, the cubs grew, and tracking their movements through the woods became more challenging. Their paw prints were bigger, and their territories expanded. Though Daniel saw fewer signs of them, he didn't mind. He understood they were learning to navigate life on their own. This was what he had always wanted, and it was also the lesson Softpaw had imparted to him. He had transformed too. The boy who used to bury himself in solitude and thick biology books now stood in classrooms, sharing real stories of survival and instinct. His research was grounded in practical experience. He knew the look of fear in an animal's eyes and how trust could develop not through training, but through shared moments of time and silence. Sometimes, the best thing a person could do was step back and allow wild creatures to simply be themselves. Then winter arrived, bringing Softpaw back into his life just after the first snowfall. Daniel was grading assignments when he heard the subtle creaking of the porch swing and stepped outside, his heart already beating faster with anticipation. There she was, alone this time, no flash of color, no vibrant display. Just her soft paw resting on the swing as if she truly belonged there. Her thick coat shimmered in the moonlight, and her breath formed delicate clouds in the chilly air. She blinked slowly at him and then closed her eyes again. Daniel didn't speak. He settled nearby, allowing her the peace to rest. He wondered if she remembered the first time she had found her way onto his porch, reflecting on those moments when she was cold and vulnerable, seeking warmth and silence from someone who simply accepted her without trying to control her. The fire crackled softly, and the crisp winter air filled his lungs. In the distance, an owl hooted softly. The soft paw shifted, stretched, and then quietly leapt off the swing. At the edge of the clearing, she paused and looked back just long enough for their eyes to meet before disappearing into the night. Daniel stood there for a while, his mug cooling in his hands, feeling the wind sweep snow across the porch. He realized that he didn't need anything more. That moment was enough. Years flowed by, but Daniel remained connected to the field. His work took him across the country, from rehab centers to wilderness preserves and rescue operations after wildfires, but the cabin stayed his sanctuary, a true home. Often, when cold air filled his lungs and the trees whispered their ancient secrets, he would return, always listening. Occasionally, under the moonlight and falling snow, he would catch a glimpse of movement near the tree line. Whether it was the soft paw of one of her grown cubs or simply a memory coming alive in the fog, Daniel found solace in the belief. Some stories are timeless. They leave traces in paw prints, in the gentle breeze, in the stillness before dawn, and in the quiet understanding shared between a man and a creature he never sought to tame, only to comprehend.